There we go. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have a magnificent guest with us today, one who's going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration, and that is none other than our brother Anthony Wazir Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. Honored to be with you, dear brother.
Yes, sir. Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And on behalf of myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast, we want to thank Allah for you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the People's Podcast. The first question that we have for you today, sir, is when did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Righty there. Let me begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I would like to greet you, dear brother Joshua, Muhammad, and your listening audience once again with the greeting words of peace, as we said in the Arabic language, of Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
I would be remiss if I did not begin, of course, by first thanking our local leadership here in the city of Baltimore of the Nation of Islam, student minister, and now Imam Abdul Salam Muhammad. Of course, right now as we speak, student minister out of Muhammad's Mosque number 25 in Newark, New Jersey, brother Abdul Haq Muhammad, along with Imam Qasim Amin Nathari, are all here in the city of Baltimore, lighting the city on fire for this holy month of Ramadan. So, of course, I want to begin by acknowledging them and their presence and their great work that they are doing right now, literally as we speak. We were together beginning on Friday for the Jummah service, where Imam Abdul Salam Muhammad was the Khatib at the Muslim Cultural Center here in Baltimore City. We were together yesterday, where all three of these beautiful brothers shared inspirational words for the first event during our Holy Month of Ramadan series of events. And they are together today, where Brother Hawk is the keynote speaker here at our Sunday service on an important subject of how to make peace with God and ourselves. And certainly, Baltimore City is in need of peace. Our world is in need of peace. So I was excited to be with them earlier. I left them to come here, of course, to be with you, beautiful brother Joshua, on this podcast. I'll be headed back later on this evening for our iftar, inshallah. But I wanted to begin by acknowledging them. And of course, I would be considered eternally ungrateful if I didn't acknowledge our hardworking student captain here in the city of Baltimore, brother student captain Andrew Muhammad. I thank Allah for this beautiful brother. He's not only been a beautiful captain, but he's been a beautiful brother, a beautiful friend, a beautiful mentor, a beautiful teacher and trainer of the men. I've had the great honor and privilege of being at my brother's side for almost every day over the last 17 months since my release. And I thank Allah that he saw fit to place me in his charge. And I thank Allah for his excellent stewardship over the lives of the men under his charge here in the city of Baltimore. And of course, I cannot begin without thanking you, Brother Joshua, for this wonderful invitation to be here with you on the People's Podcast. Everybody that I know familiar with the podcast, yourself, just keep asking me, have I been on the podcast yet? And in truth, dear brother, I don't know anything about podcasts, right? This is my introduction to podcasts right here. So I'm honored to be here. Brother Yahya said when he was on the show a few weeks ago that, brother, the whole time I was on the show, I had you in mind. So he's been pushing hard to get me here, him, Brother Adio Nasir, and I'm honored to be here. And thank you, dear brother, for the invitation. To your question, when did I first hear the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? Oh, man. When I was 15 years old, I was arrested for 2 homicide charges in the city of Baltimore. I was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life plus 20 years in prison, which is really a death sentence here in the state of Maryland. The judge who sentenced me mistakenly believed that I was unredeemable, unreformable, and that the actions that I had committed were unreconcilable. She said that it was a shame that someone could go so far wrong at such an early age in life. She said that I showed little hope of rehabilitation. She was not convinced that education, job training, or anything of that nature would ever make me a safe citizen again. And in her most condemning remarks stated that she believed that if I was ever given the opportunity to commit these crimes again, then it would happen. But I thank Allah that the judge who sentenced me was all wrong about me. So 17 months ago, I was released under the Maryland Juvenile Restoration Act, which is a law that allows those who were convicted and sentenced as juveniles to go back to court and petition the court to have their sentence reviewed and modified if they can show two things: demonstrated maturity and rehabilitation, as well as you are no longer a threat to public safety. So 17 months ago, the judge who released me said the exact opposite about me than the judge who sentenced me. In fact, the judge who released me said that in all of her years on the bench, that what I had accomplished throughout my incarceration was so remarkable that I was the very first violent offender that she had absolutely no reservations about releasing back into the community. This was a Black judge out of the circuit court in Baltimore City who was well aware of the fact that I was a member of the Nation of Islam under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Because at the root of everything that I achieved throughout my incarceration was in fact the divine guidance and leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I served a total of 29 years, 7 months, and 29 days. But when I entered the Maryland Penitentiary at the age of 17, I noticed a group of men moving throughout the institution in white shirts and bow ties, red bow ties, in military formation, turning corners at 90-degree angles in the Maryland State Penitentiary. So naturally, being exposed to that for the first time, it catches your attention. The militarism, the discipline, the organization, it catches your attention. But since it's the penitentiary, you don't want to ask too many questions on your first day. So I noticed and observed the men, but at the same time, they were noticing and observing me as they were fishing, they were recruiting for members to join the Nation of Islam. And one of those brothers gave me a speech entitled Self-Improvement, the Basis for Community Development. The speech was by a man whose name I had never heard of before. Before reading the text of that speech, I had never in my life heard the name Farrakhan before. My knowledge of the Nation of Islam was limited to the autobiography of Malcolm X, the movie Malcolm X, and that was about the extent of it. So after reading the speech at 17 in the Maryland State Penitentiary, I was already on a course, already on a journey of self-improvement with a life plus 20 years sentence, trying to figure out and decide what it is that I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So when I read the speech from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, it affected me that a man whom I have never heard of before could speak so forcefully into my life and what I was thinking and experiencing at that time. So after reading the speech, I was invited out to the service the next day, and I signed up almost 30 days into a life plus 20 years sentence in the Maryland State Penitentiary, August 17th, 1994, on the birth anniversary of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I joined the Nation of Islam in the Maryland State Penitentiary, and I have never looked back since. I was blessed by Allah to serve and represent the Nation of Islam faithfully, not as a jailhouse Muslim, but as a faithful follower and practitioner of every word taught to us from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So that is how I came in contact with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, of course, under the leadership of our brother, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
All praises due to Allah. Beautiful. Yes, sir. And thank you very much for that wonderful answer to my first question. Thank you, everyone who was watching. Thank you, Brother Nelson Ramos. Walaikum salam. Beautiful family all around the world. Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to the younger generations who feel that going to prison and or jail is a rite of passage, something that every young person should have to go through? What advice would you give to them about trying to steer them from that step?
Yes, sir. Beautiful question. I've been asked that question a lot over the last 17 months. And I had the great honor and privilege of working under our student, Captain Andrew Muhammad. He has a youth mentorship organization here in the city of Baltimore, Baltimore Brothers, where we teach manhood training to young men and try to guide them on paths that allows them to learn from the mistakes that we made so that they don't make those same errors and mistakes. So my guidance and my words to them, as it would be to any youth, is that prison will never make you a man. Going to prison will never make you a man. It has never been a rite of passage, right? And I encourage the youth here in the city of Baltimore not to let anyone ever convince them that there's something cool about going to prison. In fact, it is the very worst human experience that you could ever endure. Being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, not for a day, not for a week, not for a month, but for 3 decades, right? So this prison experience, right? And thankfully, our young brothers are waking up to the fact that it's not a rite of passage. It will never make you a man. So we teach young men at our program to be accountable for their actions, right? To show accountability for their actions and to be responsible, respectable human beings. And that way we never put ourselves in circumstances and situations that will lead to prison. And I hope that that answered your question, dear brother.
Yes, sir. You absolutely have answered my question. And thank you very much for your powerful responses. Brother Audio in the sources, assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. He says, shout out to the beautiful brother Anthony Wazir Muhammad, a natural student minister, newly appointed lieutenant in Mosque number 6, most eligible bachelor, and beautiful brother. All praises to Allah. Thank you, Brother Audio in the source. Yes, sir.
I can promise you I didn't pay him to say that.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you, sir, the Million Man March. Experiencing that in prison. What was that like?
Oh, man. The Million Man March. This is October the 16th, 1995. I joined the Nation of Islam August 1994. So a little less than a year, a little over a year later. All right. Now, the Million Man March for me personally was a critical factor in my rehabilitation because the theme was atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. So that theme and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan guiding us to take responsibility for our actions as men, for our failures as men, became a personal part of my own journey while incarcerated, where I started reaching out to the families of the victims in my own case, right? Where I started making amends and trying to show remorse accept responsibility for my own actions that led me to prison at the age of 15. So that theme of atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility was the foundational cornerstone that really planted the seed of remorse in me to start growing and started germinating. So on that day, the mall, of course, all of the Maryland prison system was on lockdown, but we were able to watch the entire broadcast live from Fajr prayer all the way up to the end and last speaker on the mall. It was a very transformational experience for me, witnessing and seeing not just 1 million respond to the call, but over 2 million respond to the call. And hearing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teach on atonement in a way that as prisoners we had never heard, never experienced before, but were in probably most need of under that environment and circumstance. I was blessed by Allah after the Million Man March to be adopted as a prisoner by our big brother Lal Muhammad, who at that time was the host of the Final Call radio broadcast here in the city of Baltimore. I believe he's now at the Muhammad's Mosque number 29 in Miami. I just saw my brother again at this year's Savior's Day, so it was exciting to make that connection with the spirit of the Million Man March still alive and well between us. So I can tell you that throughout the Maryland prison system, the Million Man March had a tremendous impact. Of course, there was a lockdown that day, but following that day, all of the street organization members started uniting. All of the Muslims and Christians started uniting throughout the prison system. We started networking and collaborating in ways that we had never really done before prior to the Million Man March. So the ripple effect of what took place on the mall transcended the bars and wires all the way down into the prison system. So that is my experience with the Million Man March, which we continue to celebrate throughout my incarceration every year on the Holy Day of Atonement anniversary by Allah's permission.
All praises to Allah. Beautiful. Excellent. Thank you very much, Brother Anthony Wazir Muhammad. Brother Yahya says, Assalamu alaikum, family. What you see and hear is Brother Anthony is and always has been sincere, serious, and strength. All praises to Allah. Thank you all very much.
Praises belongs to Allah.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you about the family members of the victims. Were you all ever able to reconcile?
Absolutely. That was the first order of business after my release. The state's attorney contacted me, and who actually supported my release asked me whether or not I was willing to sit down with the victims. But what she did not know is that throughout my incarceration, I had already been reaching out to the families of the victims to accept responsibility and to express my remorse and ask their forgiveness. So we had corresponded previously. And after my release, a victims' rights organization here in Baltimore arranged for a victim offender mediation where we got to sit down, dialogue, and express our viewpoints on the circumstance and reconcile our differences. And at the end of that mediation, they blessed me with their forgiveness by Allah's permission. I thank Allah that we have a leader in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan who taught us how to heal wounds. I studied intimately the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's engagement with the family of our brother Malcolm X, particularly his widow, Dr. Betty Shabazz, and that meeting at the Apollo Theater. I studied that and used it as a blueprint on how to heal the wounds between myself and the families of the victims in my own case. And by Allah's permission, to this day, I have been granted their forgiveness.
That's beautiful. Go ahead, brother Anthony. Yes, sir. All praises to Allah. And Sister Jamila says, all praises to Allah. Beautiful testimony, Brother Anthony. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I wanted to ask, what are some of the things that you did while you were incarcerated to keep your mind fresh and going throughout those decades?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Um, I mean, when I look back on it and reflect over it all, it's not hard to come to the conclusion that the God had His hand over me throughout the entire experience. Because even though I was incarcerated for almost 3 decades, I really don't feel like I served 3 decades. In fact, I didn't serve the time, in other words. I made the time serve me, right? I followed the guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan when he taught us that development outgrows confinement. And he taught us how that if we used our time period of incarceration as a gestation period, a period of growth and development, right? That if we didn't count the days, but if we made the days count, then at a certain point in our growth and development, the system could no longer hold us. So I started learning that early on throughout my incarceration, right? And so for the first decade of my incarceration, I never even owned a television for the first decade. And in that first decade, the 7 years of that decade were in a single cell by myself, alone, no television. I read everything that I could possibly get my hands on from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I've read all of the books and writings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I kept the Final Call newspaper in front of me every opportunity that I had to. I listened to all of the lectures on audio cassette tapes. Then we moved to CDs, and then we moved to DVDs, but I kept feeding my mind on the guidance and instructions of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So after the first decade, I studied the dictionary, following in the path of our brother Malcolm. I read the dictionary from cover to cover. I was able to read the Black's Law Dictionary from cover to cover. I was able to attend school, achieve numerous certificates as a paralegal. So my study of the law was a foundational cornerstone in relationship to my study of religion. I moved on to being employed almost instantly in the law library. So early on, I decided in my mind that I wasn't working nowhere else in the prison system except in the library. So I spent my entire incarceration around books, reading literature, history, ancient history, modern history, world history. I've read all of the autobiographies of the great leaders who came before us. So I spent my period of incarceration learning, growing, studying, right? So that I literally believe what the leader said, that at a certain point, they're just gonna have to let me go. And Allah is my witness, that is exactly what happened. All praise is due to Allah.
Yes, sir. Now, when you say they had to let you go, let us know, take us through that, and how did you feel once you got the news that you were able to be released after being sentenced to life?
Yes, sir. So the new law, the Juvenile Restoration Act passes in 2021 here in the state of Maryland. But that law is based on, decisions that came out of the U.S. Supreme Court, and beginning in 2012, 2010, where the Supreme Court basically determined that juveniles were different, and that from a criminal justice, from a legal system, juveniles should not be treated as adults. So from 2010 to 2012 and onward, the Supreme Court came out with a series of cases that all determined that juveniles should be treated differently. And they quoted volumes of study, volumes of research, volumes of evidence that proves that the brain development of juveniles is just not comparable to that of adults. So the brain science supported the fact that juveniles were different. And there are reasons why we don't allow children to vote, children to buy alcohol, children to drive cars and lease apartments, because they are not adults. So from 2010, it took the state of Maryland a decade to catch up with that law and actually put it into practice. So even though we were following it from 2010, Maryland didn't enact it until 2021, a decade later. Now, so in 2021, when the law passed, all of us who were convicted as juveniles pretty much had a good idea that we could be released, that our sentence could be modified if we could prove those two factors, that we had demonstrated maturity and rehabilitation throughout our incarceration, and that we were no longer a threat to public safety. So I was, by Allah's grace, able to prove that without any debate, any argument, any adversary from the state or from the judge who released me. So we knew in 2021 that I had a very good opportunity, but I was not actually released. We didn't actually file it until 2022. I go to court on September the 16th, 2022. The judge grants it based on the fact that she had absolutely no reservations about releasing me. She knew I was a member of the Nation of Islam. She knew exactly what was my intent upon being released. And so she released me 4 days. She signs the release. That was a Friday. I'm released 4 days later on a Tuesday. I'm picked up by our brother Bilal Rahman, student second officer here at Muhammad Mosque, number 6 in Baltimore. He picks me up from the facility and he asked me, brother, where you want to go? I said, brother, take me to 3306 Garrison Boulevard, which is the location of Muhammad's Mosque number 6 here in the city of Baltimore. He said, brother, you want to get something to eat? I said, no, sir, brother, I'm fasting the first 3 days after my release. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that fasting strengthens discipline, and I wanted to make sure that I maintained my discipline for the first 72 hours after my release into a new world, really, a new reality that I hadn't been exposed to in 3 decades. So I wanted to move slow, but it was important to me that my first stop from the prison was directly to the mosque. So Brother Bilal said, well, brother, the mosque has been under renovation and nobody's really allowed inside. We have been meeting at another location. So I said, well, brother, take me to the building and just let me behold the building. This is a building that I had been yearning to be inside, yearning to see, to behold for 3 decades. And now the opportunity was before me. And I had knew that there were some who were released before me who soldiered on the inside. And when they were released, walked right past the mosque. But I was determined to change that paradigm, to rewrite that narrative and set the example for everybody else coming behind me that's soldiering on the inside, that we got to report for duty, brother. Not next week, not next month, not next year, soon as you are released. So that's what I did. I went straight to the mosque, stood there, beheld the building. And after that, the next day, I was standing in front of Student Captain Andrew Muhammad in Baltimore City, reporting for duty. And I've been at his side by Allah's grace almost every day since then. So I'm honored and thankful that we have this beautiful brotherhood here in the city of Baltimore. I mean, real, genuine brotherhood. I don't think that my reentry and transition back into society after 3 decades could have been so effortlessly, so seamlessly as it has been without this beautiful brotherhood. I don't have anything that I brought of myself. Everything that I own, this beautiful brotherhood has brought me. Brother Captain employed me immediately the next day. So I didn't have the same struggles of finding employment with a conviction because my brothers employed me. I work for my student captain who writes the check. So I'm just honored that the transition has been smooth, and I thank these beautiful brothers for their stewardship over the life of their brother.
All praises due to Allah. Beautiful. And shout out to the FOY and the Brotherhood. All praises due to Allah. Mosque number 6. Brother Daniel E says, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam family. Brother Adi Rasul says, Brother Anthony is continuing to work by helping others incarcerated to gain their release. He just spoke for the juveniles and lifers in Annapolis this past Friday. Allah is truly working through him. All praises due to Allah. Yes, sir.
Praises due to
The people in the community have speak very highly of you, sir. So we are grateful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the People's Podcast to share your testimony. This means a lot to myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast. Yes, sir. Also, shout out to Brother Lau, who's one of my mentors since I was a junior FY. He always holds it down. He always holds it down. And shout out to him as well. A great chess player. Thank you, Brother Lau, for always being kind to our brother. Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you about fear. Have you ever been faced with fear? And if so, how have you overcome that fear?
If I'm being honest, I haven't had too many experiences with fear. You don't get arrested at the age of 15 for 2 homicide charges because you're plagued with fear, really. Unfortunately, I grew up in circumstances and environments where fear was just not an option, right? In fact, fear would almost ensure your existence wouldn't last long. So we kind of, from birth here in the city of Baltimore, have no fear of no circumstance, no environments. I was raised by my mother along with 7 other brothers and sisters, 8 of us together in a single parent household. My father left when I was about 5 or 6 years old. Of course, I knew him, but we never really communicated or talked much in those first few years. So we grew up pretty much on our own, right? And when you're on your own, fear is really not an option, right? Survival is an option. So I'm thankful to Allah that I haven't really had too many encounters with fear. And certainly once you join the Nation of Islam, under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, if you ever had been fearful, I can promise you that all fear would have been removed after following this man here, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I was blessed not to really have any in my childhood, and I certainly have none following our big brother, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Beautiful. All praise due to Allah. What type of music do you enjoy listening to?
Oh man, that's a beautiful question. I'm kind of universal, right? Because when you're in the Maryland prison system, they ship you around different locations, right? So I mean, you got to listen to the radio depending on which location you in. The stations in Jessup might not work in Cumberland. The stations in Cumberland might not work in Hagerstown. So I mean, I got the opportunity to listen to different genres of music. Of course, rap and hip hop is a beloved, of course. That's what we grew up on, nurtured on. There were several inspirational artists that were influential in my growth and development throughout my incarceration. I spent the last decade of my incarceration in Hagerstown listening to country music. So I got to listen to some modern, up-to-date country music. That kind of grew on me as well. So I'm kind of universal, brother. If the music has a message in it that I can relate to, and some music that's gonna move me, then I'm all ears.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. A lot of people have been on listening to country music recent that have been guests, and I'm someone who likes Old Dominion and Chris Stapleton. So I listen to country music as well. So yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask you, what would you like your legacy to be, Brother Anthony?
Oh man, I really haven't given that much consideration and thought. uh, Legacy, because I kind of see that. I mean, I'm just getting started here. You don't tend to think about your legacy at the beginning of the journey. Even though I was introduced at an early age in the penitentiary and soldiered on the inside for 3 decades, I kind of feel that I need to do that out here, right? I kind of feel that I got to make my bones, pay my dues, and put in some work for our nation out here, just as strong as I did on the inside. So here in the city of Baltimore, we are working moms, brother, right? We believe in putting in work day in and day out. We're in the streets, we're in the prisons, we're in the schools. I mean, so our motto, our method, our way of life is just work, right? And we leave our reward in the hands of the God that we serve, Allah. And we just put in work, brother. So I haven't had the time to think about legacy because there's too much work being done and still yet too much work for us to do. So I'll leave the legacy of those who Allah will bless to put my body in the ground at my janazah, and I'll be cool as long as I die the death of a Muslim, and I'll leave the legacy to that.
Beautiful. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, that's very powerful. Man, all praise is due to Allah. Well, I want you to know, Brother Anthony Wazir, that the People's Podcast is a home for you and a place where you can come back and always give your testimony. Let us know what life is like afterwards. Since Brother Adio Nasur brought it up about you being an eligible bachelor, is there anything that you are looking for in particular with the sisters?
I don't know why Brother Adio Nazul would bring that up. I'm going to answer that question carefully because I don't want to get myself in trouble here. There's some information that I'm privileged to that the general public is not privileged to.
Okay, okay.
So I don't want to say too much, but I don't know if the word eligible is accurate. Let me just say
Okay.
that.
Okay, well, go ahead then.
I don't know if the word eligible is accurate. And without saying too much more and getting myself in any trouble, I'll leave that one alone for my phone start ringing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand. Well, praise be to Allah. But we're rooting for you. May Allah continue to bless you and your family, the believers of Muhammad Mas number 6. And man, shout out to the home of the wire. So
Yes, sir.
This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, dear brother. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. And thank you all for watching the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.